Okay, wonderful. I think everybody is just cramming through that virtual door. We're getting a bit of a bottleneck of everyone coming in from Bill Toronto's keynote speech this morning. And what better way to follow up than to have a sit down with Meg Columbia-Walsh and her team from Amazon Web Services, and to just add to the wonderful array of digital health discussions that we've had in the past day or so. So Meg, I'd love to introduce you. This is Meg Columbia-Walsh, Director of Global, the Global Market Leader for Healthcare and Life Sciences at Amazon Web Services. And I'll let you, Meg, introduce your team. And we're really looking forward to the conversation that you've got planned ahead of us.
Yes, great, Jerry. Thank you so much. Hello, everyone. Sorry that we're virtual again. I'm waiting anxiously for us all to be in person. This is a wonderful event of the HITLAB Innovation Summit, which happens every year from November 30th to December 2nd this year. So please check out all the incredible sessions, really fantastic. And of course, today's is really an important topic. We're going to be talking about moving to the cloud in healthcare and what that means in an educational format. The HITLAB, too, in partnership with Columbia University, is just fantastic. All year long, great events for startups, for innovation, for digital marketing and media. And of course, near and dear to my heart are Women in Technology programs. So please look out for that and join us. So today, moving to the cloud in healthcare, I have a very esteemed panel I'm thrilled to be with, and I'm going to let them each introduce themselves, and then we're going to go through from the very basic to a little more advanced on what it means to move to the cloud in 2021. So let's go in order. Kim, please introduce yourself.
Oh, sure. Well, thank you very much, Meg. It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you to all of you out there. My name is Kim Forte. I am a Director of Life Sciences here at Amazon Web Services. So operating at the intersection of business and the cloud. Thanks again, Meg.
You bet. Shafiq?
Yes, good morning, and thanks for having me. I'm the Director of Sales Strategy, Operations, and Enablement for AWS Worldwide Commercial Sales. And what that means is I lead everything from strategy and planning through to operations, through enablement, through to goals and targets, to coverage and how we go to market, and a few other things.
Great, Shafiq. Thank you. Dan?
Hi, Meg and everybody else. My name is Dan Sheeran, and I lead our global life sciences business at AWS. I've been at the company about 2.5 years. And I spent the prior about 8 years leading 2 different healthcare-related startups, one focused on chronic disease management, telehealth, and one on using machine learning to help consumers improve their own nutrition.
Fantastic. Thanks, Dan. Okay, so moving to the cloud, boy, everybody's talking about it. There is a lot of press articles every day, and yet we're really only about at the beginning. We are in 4 to 5% cloud penetration in the industry. So not everybody really understands, and I'd like for our audience to somewhat start at the basics, Dan. So the move to the cloud obviously is a large investment and transformation that our customers here are making in healthcare and life sciences. Can you describe in an educational sense, what does moving to the cloud mean for our audience?
I think there are really two general categories to think about. The first is every organization of all types uses computing in some fashion today, and typically, historically, certainly, that was done using servers that would sit somewhere physically on the same premises as the end user, be that a doctor or an administrator or a researcher. And they would typically sit in a closet somewhere, or if it's a large enough facility, in a full data center, oftentimes in the basement. That created all sorts of challenges in terms of making sure you have enough capacity, or making sure you had the range of services that you need at any given time, not just from a capacity standpoint, but from features and functionality. And those are some of the many reasons why when this new model that AWS pioneered became available, people started to move their computing from something that they own and operate themselves on site to accessing those same resources over the internet, where the computing is operated in a very large facility by a third party like AWS that just brings a tremendous number of benefits. So that's the core use case, which is essentially moving what one has today to the cloud. Now, the people often will also use the term to mean use of the cloud to create new capabilities where we're not really moving something existing to the cloud. We're in our terminology, we call this developing a net new capability on the cloud. And there are many examples of that where, especially in advanced research cases, the types of computing that were required to do high-level genomic analysis, for example, or disease detection, through machine learning models, required levels of computing that were simply not even practical to have at a small to medium-sized organization. So a lot of moving to the cloud is not about physically shifting what you already have, but it's really about opening up new possibilities that you just previously did not have.
Yes, thanks, Dan. That's terrific. And, that's quite a large transformation, obviously, for an organization. What are the key benefits to them? Why take on this enormous transformation at this time?
Well, I mentioned a couple of them already, but in addition to making sure you've always have access to the capacity that you need, some of the other major benefits, particularly for healthcare and life science organizations, is these organizations have, let's start with healthcare. Healthcare organizations have typically limited budgets. They need to use those budgets as efficiently as possible. They have highly capable personnel, from their clinical staff to their analysts, and they want and need access to the greatest range of tools, software analysis tools, clinical-based population health programs, electronic medical records, and when their ability to use those is constrained, not just by capacity, but by the feature set or the set of software decisions that were made several years ago by their organization, that constrains that person's ability to remain at the cutting edge and access the most recent tools that life science companies, medical device companies, bioinformatics companies are making available to help those people discover and treat disease. And so I think the simplest answer to your question, Meg, as it applies to healthcare organizations, is that moving to the cloud helps our healthcare customers achieve their mission.
Yeah.
I think a similar answer applies to life science customers, but the difference there really being because in life sciences, the focus is on the invention of new therapies, that there's the additional benefit of really sort of a leveling or democratizing impact, where instead of needing to work at one of the world's largest organizations to have access to cutting edge tools, or land at an extremely well-funded startup, the cloud puts in many respects everybody on a level playing field, because anybody can create an account and get access to vast resources that previously was not possible. And therefore, if you've got a great idea about a particular molecule that you think might serve as a great new drug to cure a particular disease, you can start running your experiments immediately.
Yeah, that's fantastic answer, Dan, and very helpful. And coming prior to AWS as an AWS customer and a startup, You know, you're absolutely right. I mean, dialing up what we needed was very cost beneficial, but also giving us access to technology that was just phenomenal to accelerate for our large customers. And then we have our large customers here. And same thing, even though very large organizations being able to dial up and have access to the, for example, artificial intelligence or machine learning, just a fantastic benefit of moving to the cloud. So obviously, Kim, when we then tackle in large organizations, many of us listening on the phone and participating have worked in the pharmaceutical industry for a long time. Regulated industry and healthcare payers, providers, and life science companies, not easy to make anything large happen. So once there is a commitment saying, and this is your world every day, oh, okay, let's make this commitment, let's do this transformation. Can you describe for our audience what some of the steps, where do you start on such a large transformation?
Sure. Well, I don't recommend tackling everything upfront at once. I think the best way to start is to select a few projects that can help you understand some very key things about your organization. So one, how you can leverage the cloud to meet a business need. Two, the IT benefits that you can achieve, whether that's scaling quickly or reduction in technical debt. And then three, some of the change management things that you'll need to take on when you do go through your larger enterprise migration, whether that be around reorganization or culture. I think those three things are going to be really important learnings. And so to start with a few projects makes a lot of sense. And I think that you should start with something that you can get results from relatively quickly. We don't want to pick something that's going to take several years. We want to have some quick wins. So I think it needs to be something that's time constrained, where you can show benefits relatively quickly. And anything that can demonstrate agility. A lot of organizations make the decision to move to the cloud for increased agility. And so anything that can demonstrate that in a shorter amount of time, I think will help to increase the buy-in of executives and others that will need to support the organization on the journey.
Yeah, that's terrific. And a lot of these journeys start obviously in IT, but we're complex organizations. We have research and development, manufacturing, commercial. Can you describe a little bit, Kim, how each one of those started or dove in your experience in one of the big accounts?
Yeah, sure. In one of my accounts, we started with just 100 days. So we didn't pick a migration of a mainframe or an application that needed a lot of refactoring, right? We picked something that, like a web application, something that was easy to migrate, something that gave our teams a lot of confidence, right? And where they could learn, where they could dive in and experiment and learn quickly. And so, it wasn't necessarily that we started in any one of those areas of the value chain. It was more, what type of application should we move so that we can really show that we are getting value out of this decision.
Yeah, that's great, Kim. That's great. So, one of the things you mentioned is culture and change management, and that is real. People, have very big and busy jobs every day. And cloud fluency is not something that, even if those of us that are in technology or digital, you don't wake up and all of a sudden be cloud fluent. So how did you begin to help the organizations you're working, these large enterprise accounts, become cloud fluent?
That's a great question. It's through training. And I think a lot of companies assume that IT resources will get trained on their own, or that it'll take a course or two. But I think what really makes a difference in the organizations that I've seen is a very top-down CIO-sponsored effort around a much larger certification drive or program. Again, in a time-constrained, over a 3-month period, maybe even almost making it a competition, a game. whoever gets there first, and even to have the executives get certified in some of these newer technologies can be, really motivating for teams. And so that's where I've seen it be really successful, something that's very deliberate and purposeful and led from the top, and where there's a lot of benefits to becoming certified.
Yeah, I love that certification idea too, because it really is, one, it's very in depth, but two, then you have Dan mentioned democratized. I really like that. I mean, because then in a room, when you're with the IT executives, there's a lot of business conversations happening. There's a lot working every day. And I believe that more fluency across those different departments really helps in those conversations, so people don't feel intimidated for this advanced technology. So Dan, back to you for 1 second before I get to Shafiq. We just are still in, unfortunately, now more press, this pandemic. And we saw incredible impact in this advanced technology, helping what in our industry we know is a 8 to 10 year process be reduced to less than a year. And so there was just tremendous efforts in that. Can you talk a little bit, you were involved in that, can you talk a little bit about how that was beneficial and what you witnessed?
Yes, it was really gratifying for us to be able to work with several of the companies who have brought vaccines and therapies to market during the pandemic. Now, many of them were ready to do so because of important changes that they had made, not only in their technology infrastructure by moving to cloud, but also in their operating models, where many of our customers have moved to agile software development and agile business management processes that allowed them to respond quickly when the pandemic hit. I think the most visible customer of ours, the one that has consistently spoken most publicly about how specifically they leveraged cloud to develop their vaccine and bring it to market, would be Moderna. Now, Moderna is a fairly unusual, now large life science company in that they developed on the cloud first. They're what we call a cloud native company. And they have spoken very eloquently for years about the agility that, to Kim's point, the agility they've gained by having cloud native drug development, drug design, drug development, and clinical testing, and then manufacturing, all of that being digital. And because of that, each step in the process allowing for more rapid iteration, more experiments to be run simultaneously. And then once they've honed in on a drug candidate, conducting the clinical testing more rapidly, because they can manufacture various candidates. Because of the mRNA technology, they can do so much of this in software rather than needing to use a wet lab environment. And then ultimately scaling up the manufacturing. So they were able to develop the blueprints for any factory to be able to make their mRNA vaccine. And as a result, when they needed to go from producing, very, very small quantities of drugs pre-pandemic, because they were still largely in pre-commercial mode for most of their therapies, to needing to develop 1 billion doses in a year, they were able to do that. And they were able to do that by creating a blueprint that they could send to other manufacturers around the world to show them how to make the Moderna vaccine. Now, we have been doing comparable work with several other customers who have been less public about the specific ways that they're using cloud. But what I can share is many of our customers have really taken advantage of cloud to accelerate the clinical trials. Historically, clinical trials, as you know, consume between 5 and 7, sometimes even 8 years. And in the case of the COVID vaccines, our customers were able to get clinical trials completed in as short as 4 months. So really a staggering achievement. And they will share with you, and many of them have publicly, that their use of cloud and machine learning technologies was absolutely essential to accomplishing that. In fact, one of them shared with us recently that they were, because of the way they were leveraging cloud, they were able to adjust every 4 hours where they should be targeting potential participants in the trial, because they had access to county level COVID incidence data that they were continuously analyzing and then making real-time adjustments to identify where the most promising candidates would be to achieve their enrollment targets.
Wow, that's fantastic. It was really astonishing to watch because, you know, all of us know how long that process has been in the past. Now we've seen this, obviously a public health crisis and a public health need. Many of us work in this industry for that reason. That is the motivation and the drive. Do you see now, Dan, that this advances with the vaccine manufacturers who also manufacture many other products and some of the newer oral medications for this pandemic that are coming? Do you feel the advances will stick? Will we be able to translate what was an urgent need into something sustainable to be able to launch other products sooner?
That is certainly everyone's goal. And we spend a lot of our time with our customers discussing that as a goal. And I have no doubt that many of the learnings from the vaccine and therapy developments during the pandemic will in fact remain in place to some extent. But I think we also need to be realistic about the amount of displacement that those approaches had in terms of it was an all hands on deck type environment. And you can't, that's not sustainable. So when they go back to, hopefully post-COVID business as usual, how do they retain some of the learnings while still operating in a sustainable manner? Now, I am optimistic. So a particular area where we know there's deep commitment to retaining the benefits going forward is in patient recruitment and how patients are allowed to not only enroll, but participate. And what I'm referencing here is sometimes called siteless clinical trials. It's sometimes called decentralized clinical trials. But essentially, prior to the pandemic, on average, about 80% of people who participated in a clinical trial would have to be identified by a clinical trial site, which is, typically a large hospital, academic medical center. And that necessarily limited the number of people who had access. And it also, frankly, particularly for certain types of therapies and certain types of patients, really excluded a lot of people because it required them to have to go back into the clinic regularly to continue to be part of the trial. And all of that was put by the wayside during the pandemic because people couldn't go into the facility and facilities weren't capable of receiving them. So we now we've flipped it, where many of the clinical trials that have happened during the pandemic, 75 to 80% of the participants were enrolled remotely. And I think that learning will benefit many, many different types of therapies going forward.
That's fantastic, Dan. Very knowledgeable, and I appreciate that very much. I'm myself very encouraged by the personalized potential as well for the patients. Working many years and trying to reach the patients is key, and especially reaching a body of diverse patients, as we know, has been a huge issue. So I'm very encouraged that some of that is sustainable and that our reach, because there's so much that was moved virtually with this advanced technology, really makes those participant pools more robust. So that's really fantastic. I'm really hoping and encouraged by that. So Shafiq, let me turn to you. You have a large responsibility, as you described. Let's look into the future a little bit. As I mentioned, these are phenomenal advances during the pandemic. We have only about 4 or 5% of the industry, taking this big leap. Talk to us a little bit about cloud-enabled applications. Where are we going with this? And even as you see relevance to your customers.
Yes, thank you, Meg. So we've heard both Kim and Dan talk about a couple of very important principles here. The democratization of IT capabilities, I think, is a huge enabler. Certainly, as Kim talked about, the agility, the ability for cloud to allow customers to rapidly innovate on behalf of their end customers. One aspect of this that I think is also important to call out is really it's speed. Speed matters. The pandemic has taught us that this is very critical. It's accelerated many things that have previously taken years to complete the clinical studies and trials. And I think I'd say that speed is not preordained. It's a choice. Companies can choose to operate at speed. And I think one of the things we'll see coming out of this is that the agility and the speed at which we operate will persist. Now, when you talk about the types of applications that we might see, we see customers using cloud to disrupt status quo in a variety of different applications. The pandemic clearly forced many companies to shift to a remote-based work environment almost overnight. This had massive disruption to companies that ran contact centers to serve their customers or patients, for example. Overnight, organizations had to really rebuild their ability to engage with customers in a remote environment. Mm-hmm. And for those that chose to adopt, cloud provided great advantages, again, in terms of speed and agility, to be able to continue to serve customers. And we see many examples of customers that adopted this virtual contact center, the contact center in a cloud, that really was not tied to any legacy sort of on-premise infrastructure, but allowed customers to quickly shift their workforce, shift their capabilities, allow people to work remotely and be safe at home, while continuing to serve their customers during a very difficult time. And so that's a fairly common use case that we see in these types of scenarios. We also think about customers now thinking about how they prioritize designing for resiliency. Yeah, it's another theme that's really surfaced as we work through the pandemic, and building systems and solutions and services to their customers that can scale up and down quickly as customer demands and needs change, as patient needs change, and that can withstand shocks to the system. And so cloud enables you to design systems and solutions that achieve that outcome. And a third scenario I'd say is we see many examples of medical device manufacturers, for example, that are leveraging the Internet of Things or the Internet of Medical Things to add sensors and connectivity to a wide range of devices that now start to light up and enable remote healthcare scenarios, medical monitoring, predictive maintenance, and many other scenarios. We could go on, but I know we have limited time, but I wanted just to give you a taste of the types of things that you could start to enable with cloud.
Yeah. No, that's fantastic. And, one of the things that's been very interesting to watch is, again, in training consumers, and we've seen it with large transformations before, teaching consumers how to use the web, understanding social media, understanding mobile applications. Everybody gets pretty good at it quickly. Well, one of the things that I've seen that really is very interesting is that telehealth has been around for a long time. And many organizations, I worked on a Johns Hopkins project, 20 years ago. Now we have just trained an entire world. It's not even just the United States, it is the globe, on how to remotely access their healthcare. I find that to be a pretty significant change. This topic is on the cloud, but that's the advanced technology in the background they get to use. So that telehealth, it'll be interesting now because for my children recently, they did their physical check-ins, their COVID check-ins remotely with the physician online. So comment a little bit, again, we're in the crystal all, Shafiq, about how you see those basics, fast delivery of pharmaceuticals and telehealth, et cetera, impacting, with this advanced technology running in the background.
Yeah, that's great. It's so true. And again, COVID has taught us a thing or two about accelerating the need to provide these types of services remotely and to a wide portion of the planet. So that's super exciting. I think what really powers a lot of this are the AI and ML, the artificial intelligence and the machine learning that's applied to the data that's generated. So when we think about the vast volumes of data, whether it's within an organization, whether it's being collected through these IoT or IoT scenarios and devices, this starts to now allow us to build very personalized and predictive insights based on the individual.
Yeah.
And so I'd say historically, medical services in that sense, telehealth has been very reactive. I have a problem, I need to go see someone. I think that we're at the tipping point now where it's going to start to become predictive and proactive, where we can apply AI to understand my genomic sequence, to understand the kind of markers that demonstrate risk for me as an individual, that can start to take telemetry around the sensors and the wearables that I have to see how I'm tracking, to proactively predict in advance where I might be at risk of facing an issue, be able to intervene in advance and prevent that from occurring. And so I think there's a whole world of new ideas and new opportunities and new scenarios that will be enabled through this use of big data, through AI, and through intense personalization to the individual, to the patient level, which I think is super exciting for us to see.
Yeah, I do as well. And that was the company that I built with conjunction with AWS was regarding personalization. Really what it came down to when the customer said, okay, great, this is all fantastic, Meg. We are literally personalizing real time using machine learning, but how do I move my entire organization to be able to get AI ready? To start to be able to enable this technology. And I think that change management, the cloud, all of that is really the basis for that. But one of the things you mentioned, which I think is really critical, is data. We have been working with, obviously, data. Not everybody owns their IP. They've outsourced it to a lot of different places and agencies, et cetera. I think the core of what you're describing will be very big initiatives, even as Dan and Kim described the cloud and their customers, is the data strategy. Just a huge focus, because now we're going to have 4D segmentation of patients. We're going to have data we've never seen before. By context of first party, second party, and third party data. We're not touching on today, obviously, there's safety and privacy and all of that. That's very important. But I do think the potential to reach an individual patient, to be able to tailor communication and treatments to them, is going to be one of the future benefits of this move to the cloud and the resulting. And Dan mentioned it in clinical trials, being able to personalize that communication to recruit, et cetera. So I'm glad you touched on that. I think that is very important. And I think the data and analytics, we often say, in the past couple of years, first we moved the CMO and the CIO together. Right? We had to really have the CMO and commercial become very versed in digital and IT technology, et cetera. And now we're bringing in a new third player, which is the chief data officer, the data and analytics becoming front and center, side by side, one with the cloud, and two, because of the amazing technology and databases, et cetera, they get to take advantage of on demand, but then also the AI and ML that they get to take advantage of. And that is a pretty sophisticated data strategy to do that. And that's been a lot of the work with the pharmaceutical companies that I've seen really become in very laser focused. What is our data strategy going to be across the organization? How does it change from where we are now? How do we own more of our IP? So I do think that as we move, that's going to be, a big focus. Dan, just as an aside, it wasn't really a planned question, but do you have a comment on that data? I know you see this often as well.
Sure, I'm glad you've raised it, Meg. It's both a challenge, a growing challenge if left unaddressed, and it's an enormous opportunity. The challenge comes from the fact that both in healthcare and in life sciences, data is typically growing at 30 to 40% per year. Which means it's doubling in less than 3 years. You simply cannot, even from a physical space standpoint, you cannot continue adding the number of servers and other equipment needed in a typical hospital environment to accommodate that. Why is the data growing so fast? Well, it's for a variety of reasons, but of course, moving the electronic medical records is been to the systems they're now on was the first step. But really the bigger driver is very data intensive new approaches to medicine with imaging now being used far more often, and imaging is very, very large files. And then increasingly the use of genomics, or genetically testing a given tumor to profile what specific mutation is causing this cancer. And that testing is being done either on site or quite nearby in many cases. And again, those genomic testing results are vast data sets. So it's things like that that are driving this explosion of the need for the use of data, and therefore doing it, storing it all and analyzing it all in the cloud, eliminates all of those problems. Yeah. But on the opportunity side, by having access to that data, and not just your own data, but other organizations' data, which becomes possible when you store in the cloud and you have the right governance and sharing policies in place, we can invent new drugs faster. We can discover new care pathways faster because we can look at larger data sets and ask more interesting, more statistically valid questions about what might actually be going on.
Yeah. That's fantastic. We could run 5 sessions just on this and genomics and how we're going to target individual proteins. Honestly, it's which is why I wanted to start at the basics here, because when you really start to look at that opportunity, it is really enormous. When I first saw some of the advantage of this firsthand, I sat back and really felt, since the early web, I had not seen something that was going to have such a huge shift and benefit to the industry as I do now, both with the cloud, being able to access that technology, as well as the artificial intelligence and machine learning. Just fantastic. So, this is all levels of the spectrum, right? We still have we have an ecosystem here of agencies and partners, consulting firms, et cetera, that help our customers get to the endpoint on any given day. So Kim, bringing it back down to reality a little bit, what do you see in your clients as the move? What do you see as the best next steps for them? If you can just comment a little on what you've heard for the people listening.
Sure. This has just been, a great conversation. Thank you, Meg, for facilitating it. I see a wide range of different projects. There's no shortage of ideas out there. I think once you get your legs under you in terms of operating in the cloud, and sort of get beyond some of the experimentation and the POCs, and you're ready to bring applications, some of the ones that Shafiq mentioned, into the cloud and scale them, I think that the next step is really starting to take advantage of all all the ideas that are out there, putting together a strong prioritization process, understanding the business value that can come out of the different projects, prioritizing them correctly, and then getting small teams working quickly on executing those. Some of the great ideas that are out there that have been mentioned around decentralized trials or imaging and genomics. There's a whole bunch of work being done around digital twins, whether that be a digital twin of human organs and how drugs operate inside humans and not needing to use real people for those things, or whether it's a manufacturing process where we can quickly see where we might run into quality issues and we can increase the safety of manufacturing going forward, or make it much more efficient, reduce waste, whether it's increasing our transparency across supply chains. That is an issue that our industry has typically struggled with. All of those areas, or whether it's around creating a very unique patient experience as part of a treatment that can increase adherence and therefore patient outcomes going forward. I think all of those things have real, we're at the precipice of adding real value to the industry as some of those big projects get to scale.
Yes. And, I think one thing that I'm really hearing too, Kim, is a lot of times when these types of transformations happen, we leave it or leave too much of it to the IT department. As I see this migrations and this conversation around the cloud and all of the things that you've heard today, even around the pandemic, et cetera, one of the things that really stands out for me is this is not an IT only initiative. The minute IT commits to this, and you're going to have access to this advanced technology, in addition to the training you mentioned, it's just really important to go department by department and see, okay, if we are cloud enabled and I'm heading R&D or I'm heading commercial, which is now advanced marketing and personalization, or if I'm heading manufacturing, et cetera, to me, it's a great initiative coming out of these types of programs, as well as the IT department, is how does that affect me? What am I able to do now in commercial R&D, manufacturing, et cetera, as a result of this great work IT is doing in this move to the cloud? To me, and again, commenting on seeing this as the most impactful since the early web, I really feel that's a very important message to the audience, which is this really impacts the business, and it is a cloud initiative for everyone, right? Not just for the IT department. This is a phenomenal opportunity to do some things that you had ideas for and maybe weren't able to do in the past.
So true. It definitely needs to be a strong partnership.
Yes, exactly. Exactly. So we're nearing the end. I'm just going to ask Shafiq and Dan, just for a closing thought, if you would, for our audience on this great topic. Dan, go ahead.
I think I would echo a comment that Kim made about the importance of starting small. It gets easy to be overwhelmed by the range of things that are possible. And so starting with what is the business outcome or the clinical outcome that I have in mind, and being as specific about that as possible, and sticking to that despite all of the shiny objects along the way, I think is super important. And then secondly, and related to that, having a plan for, okay, if this as a pilot goes well, what would be required to actually use this in a we call a production environment, with patients, or actually used at scale in drug discovery? Because to go from a pilot where you're kind of on your own sandbox to an environment where the work you're doing could potentially impact lots of other stakeholders in your organization and elsewhere. There's a big gap there, and we find that customers who don't to anticipate that and have plans for it early on, involving those stakeholders, they often see their initial progress end up stalling.
Yeah, too many pilots. Yes, that don't go. That's an excellent point, Dan. Excellent point. Yes, Shafiq, thoughts on the closing here?
Yeah, I would add, look, cloud really enables rapid innovation and experimentation. And so I would hope that people take advantage of that opportunity, that you can start to really be disruptive. And we've seen many examples of companies being disruptive in how they approach the industry they serve. And cloud is an enabler for that. And so I would hope that we don't lose that opportunity here, that we continue to take advantage of all of that benefit that cloud brings, to invent for your customer, invent new ways of serving your customer. I think that's powerful for companies that adopt it.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Well, what a great session. Also knowledgeable. I'm sure the audience just really appreciated all of your input. Kim, Dan, and Shafiq, thank you so much for joining the HITLAB. These sessions are always terrific, and it goes on until the 2nd. So there's a lot of other great sessions happening. I hope that you'll check out and join. So thank you to my panelists, fantastic, and have a wonderful day, everybody. And thank you to the audience. And I'm happy to field personal questions because we are at time, and Jerry will share that information. So thank you all very much. Thanks to my panelists. Have a great day.
Thank you.
Thanks, Meg.
Bye-bye.
Wonderful, Meg. Thank you very much for that wonderful conversation. The chat doesn't have to stop there. We will open up a networking room for you folks in the networking room section. So please do migrate over there to continue the conversation. Thank you again, Meg. Really wonderful segment, and we'll see you offline.
Okay, thank you so much.
Wonderful, thank you. And everybody else in the audience, please stay on later on. We're going to have a quick break now, but we're going to return at 11:30 for Women's Health Tech Wednesdays with Sarah Vasey from Providence. So see you all then. Thanks again, Meg.
Thanks, Jerry. Bye now.